9, 8.
You're watching Experience Comic Culture and Sales. Streaming live daily to Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, and Twitter.
2, 1.
So there's these two fellows, and they're walking in the woods one day, and they come across this gigantic hole in the ground. I mean, this is big, and it's so big and deep that they can't even see the bottom. So they get curious. They want to know how deep it is, and they start looking around, and they're finding sticks and rocks and stuff that they're throwing in the hole. And every time they do, they don't hear it hit the bottom. And this is so they're trying to find bigger and bigger things. So eventually, one of them finds this old railroad tie just lying out in the woods. Well, it's so big that it takes both of them to pick it up and drag it over to the hole. And then they lift it and they throw it in. Nothing. They don't hear it hit the ground. But the weirdest thing happens. A few seconds later, a cow comes racing through the woods, right past them, and jumps in the hole. And the guy's like, that's crazy. What the hell? They decide, all right, we're just going to get out of here. This is weird. So they start walking back towards civilization, and they come across a farmer. The farmer's looking around the woods. He goes, you guys seen my cow? I can't seem to find her. And the guy says, well, we did see this cow. It came sprinting through the woods and jumped into that giant hole back there. And the farmer shakes his head. He goes, no, that can't be my cow. Mine was tied to a railroad tie. Stay tuned for the Dan Wickline Show. Hey, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the Dan Wickline Show here on The Experience. It is Tuesday, October 24th already. Can you believe that? Doesn't it feel like this year just started? We're already in the end of October. It's going to be Halloween like next week. I'm not even sure what day Halloween falls on. That's a good question. So yeah, next Tuesday is Halloween. We're a week away from Halloween, which means that next Tuesday's show is going to have to be Halloween related. But and we will do something probably, I don't know, Werewolf by Night, talk about Marvel horror characters, DC horror characters. We'll do something. But yeah, this month is just flying by. This year is flying by. Well, we got some news to cover. We're going to talk about Loki episode 3 of season 2. People are already talking about Christmas. Yeah. There should be a rule that you don't start talking about Christmas until at least after Halloween. I mean, and stores putting Christmas stuff out. Again, don't forget that Thanksgiving exists. It is a decent holiday. But you don't need to put things out for Christmas before Halloween. You just don't. So. All right, well, we got a bunch of news to cover, catching up for since Friday. And we've got, like I said, we're going to talk about the 1893 episode of Loki with some of the creepiest stuff I've ever seen. And that'll be our day today. So let's jump into it. We're going to start with some news from DC. And this has to do with James Wan. And, he's already had to come online and address the rumors about Amber Heard's role in the Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom. But he's had to come back on social media, and he's not a social media guy, but he's had to jump on and talk about all the noise about the production. Now, he spoke with Empire Magazine, so not really jumping on social media, but he's addressing it in this magazine interview. And he says that the reports over reshoots didn't capture the real picture of events on set. He says, we probably did 7 or 8 days of reshoots, which is nothing for a movie of this size. It was just spread out because it's so hard to get your actors back once you finish an initial shoot. Now, he went on to say that I'm not the kind of person that says this movie has to turn out exactly how I planned it on day one. Your art will never be organic, or your art will never be organic if you locked into that mentality. So basically what he's saying is that you shoot the picture, you look at what you got, and you make adjustments. It's what people do. It's what Marvel has done since day one. It's why they make a lot of really good things, is because they give themselves that ability to correct things. And DC's the same, James Wan's the same. Now, he has admitted that he's got to be a little more zen about dealing with all the noise that's going on right now, saying, I'm a pretty private person. I don't get on social media and have fights, but it's difficult because the narrative has emerged that this is not has emerged that is not the reality. The noise is fun to write about and it gets clicks, but people don't know the truth. That basically, he says, this is the movie he wanted to make. So when we do get Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom, it's the movie he wanted to make. He has said that he would be willing to come back and do a third Aquaman movie if asked, but he doesn't know exactly what Peter Safran and James Gunn, the new heads of DC, have in mind. But he says, I've learned to never say never. So somebody who, let's move it on to somebody who was a big part of Loki season 1, Kate Herron. She is going to co-write an upcoming episode of Doctor Who featuring, and I don't know if I'm getting his name right yet. I haven't heard it enough to know, but Nakuti Gatwa. Herron will write the episode with longtime collaborator Bryony Redman, an actor and comedian whose work includes the Welsh comedy Point Break with Damon Evans and the award-winning short film Forget Me Not. Herron is the latest big creative name to board the upcoming season for Russell T Davies. She executive produced and directed the entire Marvel Loki series and has also directed episodes of Sex Education, which Gatwa was a star in. Herron and Redman have collaborated on a range of work together, including comic The Storkenine, as well as TV and film projects, including Sci-Fi Miss Universe and the short film Smear. So Kate Herron, who was a big driving force of Loki season 1, is going to be jumping on to help do an episode of Doctor Who, and I think that's awesome. Because wibbly wobbly, timey wimey, you know. Jeremy Renner has recorded a collection of songs marking various milestones in his recovery from the January 1st snowplow accident that left him with those life-threatening injuries. Now, if you're not familiar with the fact that Jeremy Renner is an accomplished singer, has a band, has an album out that it sounds pretty good. Jeep had him use his music in commercials. You know, I'd say he's a good musician, and his band's pretty good. So this is not just him going, oh, I'm going to try to put my life back together. I know, I'll write music. No, he's been writing music for a very long time. But he went to Instagram and posted saying that it was a collection of music we wrote about different milestones in my journey of recovery since January 1st this year, called Love and Titanium, has been painful, deeply healing, and ultimately cathartic for me to create. I hope I get the courage to share it with you all. Now, the collection title, Love and Titanium, actually refers to a comment Renner made during an interview he did last spring for ABC News, where he said, "I've lost a lot of flesh and bone in this experience, but I've been refueled and refilled with love and titanium." So I'm kind of curious to listen to it. I actually like the music he produced prior to this. So I am pretty amazed by his comeback and how he's progressing. So I'm very curious to hear what this music has to say. So, all right, you guys know that I picked up the Star Wars Timeline book. I have not had a chance to get the MCU one yet. It just came out, and haven't had a chance to order it yet, but I will be doing it soon. But the new Marvel Studios, the Marvel Cinematic Universe and Official Timeline, includes a foreword by Marvel Studio President Kevin Feige. And in the introduction, he kind of lays out what's going on with this following paragraph. On the multiverse note, we recognize that there are stories, movies, and series that are canonical to Marvel, but were created by different storytellers during different periods of Marvel's history. The timeline presented in this book is specific to the MCU's sacred timeline through Phase 4. But as we move forward and dive deeper into the multiverse saga, you never know when timelines may just crash or converge. Hint, hint, spoiler alert. Now, what is presented in the actual book is all of the Marvel Studios feature films and the live-action Disney Plus series up through Phase 4, plus the two special presentations, Werewolf by Night, which Jay, Jenna, and I were just talking about before the show, and the Guardians of the Galaxy Holiday Special. Now, what this means is that currently on the sacred timeline, I love that they're using the same name they use as in Loki, but currently on the sacred timeline, stuff like the Sony Spider-Man films, the Netflix series, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., those things don't exist, but it doesn't mean that events can't happen to either bring those things in through multiverse stories like Multiverse of Madness, Spider-Man Far From Home, Loki, or the upcoming Secret Wars and Kang Dynasty. Or they could be merged together in some kind of realignment, like a Crisis on Infinite Earths, even though that's a DC thing. So, no, Daredevil is not canon. No, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. is not canon. But doesn't mean they don't necessarily exist, if that makes any sense. Now, one of the things that the book does deal with is one of the most talked about mistakes in the MCU. In Spider-Man Homecoming, when Adrian Toomes, Michael Keaton's character, who goes on to be the Vulture, is talking about the Battle of New York, he says that it was 8 years ago. The problem is that canonically, the Battle of New York took place in 2012, and the events of Spider-Man Homecoming take place in 2016, meaning that Toomes got it wrong, which happens to a lot of people. Well, the timeline book confirms that the Battle of New York does take place in 2012 and that Homecoming is 2016. Now, Marvel does address it just a little bit in the timeline book, and I guess it takes place on page 173. Miss Minutes actually pops up in a little blurb and says, red line alert, hi again. Adrian Toomes says the Battle of New York was 8 years ago, but the events were only 4 years prior. This one's a real head scratcher for us. I reckon an analyst misplaced the case file. Yes, that is as close as I get to a Miss Minutes imitation, by the way. So they acknowledged that they made a mistake. and they give us the actual timeline thing. So, all right. Back to DC for a second. Recently, a fan asked James Gunn if the new DCU will have the same style and tone as his work on like Peacemaker Season 1 and The Suicide Squad, which Gunn was the director and writer of. And we both know that they had heavy comedic elements. And he asked straight out, does Peacemaker Season 1 and your Suicide Squad match the style and tone you're going for in the new DCU, or will it shift much from project to project? Now, Gunn, of course, responded by saying it will shift from project to project and will reflect the unique sensibilities of the filmmakers involved. So he's not going to force a comedic tone on other directors and stuff, and he may not use it himself, because in a previous interview, Gunn said, when asked about comparing the stylistic tone of Superman Legacy to, say, Guardians, Gunn said, I've learned so much from making these movies, but it's not like Superman is going to have the exact same vibe as the Guardians movies. It's actually quite different. So I think anybody who's worried about that kind of thing can rest easy that I don't think that's going to happen. All right. There's one last story I want to cover here, and it's going to be kind of odd to cover because there's these two narratives coming out. Tomorrow is the next court date for Jonathan Majors. And we're watching Jonathan Majors in Loki. We're going to be talking about him as his first real appearance was in this third episode. And a lot of people think he's just nailing it. He's doing a great job. And there has been a back and forth. This trial keeps getting delayed. Currently, there's a motion from the defense to throw the case out because of all this evidence that they've presented showing that, video of the woman at a club, all of this stuff. Prosecution had to delay at one point because they weren't ready. Defense had to delay because they weren't ready. But tomorrow is supposed to be the day that the judge is supposed to decide on whether this goes forward or not, and if we actually get to a trial. The thing is that there's suddenly a bunch of information coming out today, and it's being spun depending on which sites you're looking at. Some are very much on Major's side, and they're talking about how the DA has that the accuser is actually going to be arrested, and how the DA has promised not to prosecute her, and stuff like that. While the side that's against Majors is kind of leaning into this court filing that the DA has made. And the DA has made this filing as a counter to the motion to dismiss. Now, the main things that are coming out of it is the DA is accusing Major's lawyers of fabricating evidence and releasing fake narratives into the public to work against their case. I don't want to get into too much details on what those things are, because again, it's hard to tell what is and isn't. But the DA has also said in their filing that they are requesting medical records from the UK and a London police report having to do with an incident that took place in September of 2022 that that may have involved Majors and the accuser, because they were both in London at the time and they were still dating, and that this may have been been part of a trend or basically this is how he acts. So now the DA doesn't say they've gotten the medical or the report from the police, but they've requested it. So why wasn't Majors arrested then? There's a lot going on here. So both sides are pushing narratives right now. I don't think the DA is going to give up on this case anytime soon. I don't think we have a clear-cut idea of exactly what happened. There's rumors right now that even though that there's word that there's a video of the incident, that the video has never been produced. There's rumors right now that the driver's statement that none of what the accusers said happened, that the driver never actually filed that statement, that it's a fake statement from the from Major's lawyers. Everything is all over the place right now. So it'll be up tomorrow. We'll see the court case. How much we'll know after that, I don't know. My guess at this point is that this is going to move forward, that the prosecution is just putting enough in there and making enough accusations to make the case move forward in hopes of still getting the police report from London. Why they haven't gotten it already, I don't know. This has been going on a long time. So there's a lot of stuff going on here, and I don't know. It's hard to discern what the truth is from all the spin on both sides, because DA Bragg's office has been spinning this just as much as Major's group. So hopefully tomorrow we'll get a little bit better light shed on it. I have a feeling this case is going to move forward, and that we won't know the outcome for quite some time. You know, this isn't going to be a case where, unless the judge just throws the whole thing out tomorrow, this is going to continue on for a while. We'll be well and done with Loki and moving on to other stuff. So we'll have to see how this progresses, but that is what's going on with the case. If by the showtime tomorrow we have some information from the trial, we don't even know if Majors is going to be at the trial tomorrow, but if we have information, I will share it with you then. All right, guys, that is the news. I'll check and see if anything popped up during the break. Otherwise, when we come back, we'll talk Loki episode 3, season 2. Be right back.
Did you know that every experience show, including some exclusive content, streams on Twitch? Check it out. Twitch.tv/the_EXP. Or just scan that QR code. Programming on the EXP is made possible by viewers like you, or your local comic shop, or that Kickstarter you backed, or the publisher you like, or comic industry professionals who want to share a message with the world. Really, anyone who wants to advertise with us can. If you're interested in seeing a product you know and love, or are creating, or are publishing, or are involved with, advertised here on The Experience, and having your message shared with our viewers, please reach out by scanning the QR code below or visiting our website and using the contact form.
Comic Collectibles is a pretty straightforward show. You got Rex here, he sells the comics, and you got Rockin' Robbie, he knows about the comics. And finally, John, well, no one really knows what John does. I mean, don't get me wrong, he's a great guy, but he just keeps showing up. Come to think of it, I don't even really know how he gets in here. Anyway, awesome comics, rare books, rarer signatures, slabbed books, and amazing cover sketches by Ken Hazer and others. Simple formula, you want the comics, you buy the comics. To sum up, Rex sells the comics, Robbie knows the comics, and John, who might possibly be a ghost. I mean, seriously, has anyone ever seen him show up or leave? Comic Collectibles with Rex and John, Mondays from 6 to 8 Eastern on The Experience. Comic culture and sales.
According to a statistic that I just made up, people spend 4 hours a day changing the television channel. People who watch The Experience don't do that. Save yourself a ton of time by tuning into the experience and enjoying our new original programming 7 days a week. And then tell your friends. Think about the money they could save on batteries in the remote alone just by tuning into the experience. Find out more by scanning the QR code below.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Dan Wickline Show here on The Experience. Stick around today. We've got, of course, Minute to Skim It will be coming up at 4 p.m. Pacific, 7 p.m. Eastern. Not 100% who's all doing the show today, but they'll be doing reviews. And I think it should be Jay, Kyle, and Miss Jen. But they'll be doing a lot of good books and give you an idea of what to pick up at the store this week. And, of course, we've got Mint Hunter tonight. So it's a good lineup here. You want to stick around for that. Remember to hit the like and subscribe buttons. You know, I don't know what we're currently at subscription-wise, but when we hit milestones, we seem to give away things. So just saying. You never know what's going to happen. There's one other thing I wanted to address real quick. There was a book that came out about 2 weeks ago. No, actually exactly 2 weeks ago. Called, let me get the actual title and authors of it. MCU, The Reign of Marvel Studios. Written by Joanne Robinson, Dave Gonzalez, and Gavin Edwards. Now, first thing, anytime you see a book that needs 3 authors, I always am skeptical. Just because, what does the third guy need to be? But there's 3 of them. And this is supposed to be going into a lot of behind the scenes stuff having to do with Marvel and everything from people that Kevin Feige refuses to work with again to why certain things bombed, why, it's all the nitty gritty dirty stuff that, behind the making of the MCU. You need to start with the fact that it is an unauthorized biography of the MCU, of Marvel Studios. So you have to take the information with a little grain of salt. It's not guaranteed that everything in it is right. But if you go online right now, you will see articles that people are spinning out of this book and treating it all as gospel, as this is exactly what happened. And that's hard. I mean, it's hard to say that for sure, because you have 3 people who are digging into it. They're talking to people who've worked on the movies. They're talking to insiders. And not everything is catastrophic. One of the great example is Scott Derrickson. Scott Derrickson left Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness over creative differences. When you hear that in Hollywood, you assume that that's a cover story, because that's that go-to thing that you say when you don't want to say the fact that the studio hated everything that the guy was doing and wanted to fire him, or the studio was making changes and he couldn't put up with it anymore. But this is a case where everybody involved has come out and said, yeah, there was creative differences. He wanted to go more in a true horror story, and Marvel wanted to do something more that tied together different things. They wanted more of the multiverse angle, and he wanted more of the madness angle. And at the end of the day, they didn't agree on the movie that they were trying to make together and parted ways amicably. And they've even talked about, yeah, they could do things together in the future. But of course, when he left, everybody's like running with it. Oh, they say it's creative differences. That's never the truth. Well, no, in this case, it was. So when you read these stories out there, like Kevin Feige refuses to work with one actor and one director ever again, just know that there's some speculation in there, and that it may not be as clear cut as they make it out to be. And just because I know you guys are curious, because I was curious, what actor and what director Kevin Feige is supposed to never want to work with again? The actor shouldn't surprise anybody. Ed Norton. It's why they moved on to Mark Ruffalo. At least that's according to that. Now, in defense of all of this, Mark Ruffalo was Marvel Studio and Louis Leterrier's original choice for Bruce Banner, for the Hulk. They wanted Mark Ruffalo. Universal wanted a bigger name. They wanted Ed Norton. And since Universal was the driving force behind the movie, it was Ed Norton. So it doesn't surprise me that Marvel made the change. But you hear a lot of stories about how Ed was horrible on set, or, wanted changes, wanted to control every aspect. When it came up to time to do the Avengers, he wanted every control of every aspect of his character. And that's not how Marvel works. Well, how much of that is true? How much of it is extrapolation on events? Hard to say. Now, I have not read the new MCU Reign of the Marvel Studios yet, but I have downloaded it as a audiobook, and it's next on my list after The Man Who Stole Tomorrow. I'm reading, this is completely off topic, but a company has come along and taken a group of Marvel prose novels from the late 70s and is turning them into audiobooks. And even though it looks like they're brand new books, they are from the past. And I'm currently listening to a book that came out in 2012, the audiobook, but it's based on a David Michelini Avengers novel written in 1979, which is nothing wrong with that. I'm enjoying the hell out of it, but it took me a few minutes to figure that out and go, oh, this is from 1979. That's why there's references to Devo, and the Avengers lineup is Quicksilver, Scarlet Witch, the Vision, the Beast, Cap, Thor, and Iron Man. Beast doesn't normally make a lot of these things, but it's a fun read so far, and I've got about 3 hours left on it. So I'm going to finish that first and then jump into this MCU book. All right. Let's get to Loki. Loki episode 2. Now my season 2. My feelings on this season so far have been that the first episode was brilliant and set the bar really high. And that there was no way episode 2 was going to be able to be as high as episode 1, because they set up and give us so much to chew on in episode 1 that episode 2 was going to have to start putting some of the veggies on the plate. They were going to have to start connecting the dots. And when you start connecting the dots, you get more character moments, you get more exposition moments, and it slows the pace down. And it did. Now, I am not saying episode 2 was bad in any stretch of the imagination. Episode 2 was a good episode, but episode 1 was like really up there. Well, episode 3 is kind of, I don't say it's as good as 1, but it's getting back up there. So your ride has been like and like you're riding a jet ski. Easter egg moment. All right. So what we get in this episode is introduced to what may be the origin of Kang the Conqueror. You get Ravonna Renslayer dropping the TVA handbook, which we've dealt with a lot in the first 2 episodes. There's talk about it. It's written by Ouroboros, Ki Huy Kwan's character. And, he's, there's a toss back to Loki, and Loki catches. It's some great stuff having to do with this book. This book exists. They put it in your face enough that you realize that everything in the TVA exists in this handbook. And the thing that Kang, or He Who Remains, had Miss Minutes ask Ravonna to do was to go back to 1880, I think it was, something like that, and put the book in the window of this young kid who we see is making candles at the time, or alarm clocks, because that's how candles used to be alarm clocks. You'd make a candle, you'd put a nail in, and then when it burned down and the nail fell, it hit metal, and that was your thing to wake up. Anyway, so he was a candle maker, just young 10, 11, 12-year-old kid, and he gets this book. And of course, when we then jump to 1893, we see him as an adult, Victor Timely. Now, some important things to pick up is that when he gets the book, when Ravonna pops in and gets the book, the little tag at the bottom telling us what time, what year it is, and where we are, tells us that we are on the sacred timeline. Loki pops up in that same era. It is following Renslayer, still on the sacred timeline. When they jump ahead to 1893, they are now on a branch timeline. So that moment of her giving him that book is a Nexus event. Now, this starts a lot of questions, like, okay, is this how Kang gets all the knowledge? Is this how it all starts? There's a lot of interesting things going on here. Now, the next thing we see is that we're at the World's Fair, the 1893 World's Fair in Chicago, known as the White City. And there's a lot of references to things that actually happened at that fair. Loki and Mobius are eating Cracker Jacks. That is where Cracker Jacks were first introduced. So the fact that they're eating they picked this up at the Cracker Jack booths, completely legit. There's a reference to a gentleman named H.H. Holmes, who was a serial killer around the time of the fair and was getting people to stay at his house for the fair and killing them. And he killed like 18 people. There's a book out there called The Devil in the White City, all about this. So there's a lot of stuff in this. And this is also the fair that Edison and Tesla competed against each other to how they were going to light up the fair using AC or DC current. So there's a lot going on at this fair. And we meet Victor Timely. And the interesting thing is because they've cast Jonathan Majors, Kang is African American. And in 1893, an African American scientist or inventor talking to a crowd of people would not get a great reaction from the crowd, because that was what the era was. And they do address that in some of the dialogue, some of the references about, what would you know about science, boy? Stuff like that. So Marvel doesn't shy away from that. So good for them. But there's a lot that goes on there. We also see a different side of Miss Minutes. And that's one of the disturbing part of this whole thing, is that Miss Minutes appears to be in love with He Who Remains. And you get a little bit of that at the end of season 1. But it's like turned up to 11 in this episode, where she even tells him that she loves him, and asks why he never created a body for her. And mind you, she is talking to someone who's never met her. This is the earliest stage, you know. But we get a lot of quirks about Victor Timely. His speech patterns and everything else are very interesting. It's obvious that he has a speech impediment, and that how he speaks is likely him teaching himself to deal with the impediment, because for an African American boy in that era, child in that era, they wouldn't have access to somebody to help them get over a stutter and things like that. So I think it's a really good character. I think he handles the character very well. But there's a lot of, nuance to him. He's a bit of a con man, where he's trying to sell his inventions and stuff, even though they don't work. And it's not that they don't work because they're bad or they're fake. It's because the technology he needs to make them work doesn't exist yet. He's been given a book with a bunch of future technology, and he's trying to work from it. So that, I think, is very interesting. We get Sylvia comes back in the Sylvia. Sophie DiMartino, Sylvie, that's it, Sylvie. Thank you, could not get that. Sylvie comes back, plays a key. Ravonna Renslayer plays a key. Miss Minutes, creepy as hell, plays a key in this. We find out that Victor does not want partners. As soon as Ravonna says, it looks like the two of them may be on the verge of hooking up, they're having a good moment, and she says, this is going to be a great partnership. Next thing you know, he's thrown her off the boat into a lifeboat. So there's a lot going on there, a lot to take in. There's an amazing moment where Sylvie has to decide whether or not to kill Victor, and realizes that Victor at this point can go on to become he who's remained and cause all the problems, but at that point hadn't done anything. Similar to the way that the TVA tried to prune her as a child, and she hadn't done anything yet because of what they thought she might do. So I do like the fact that Sylvie gets rid of Ravonna by throwing her at the end of time, along with Miss Minutes, with the decaying Kang, or He Who Remains, which is another interesting thing, because the end of time thing was supposed to be outside of time, so time is not supposed to pass. So why is the body decaying? Just something to think about. But there's a lot going on here. Loki takes a step back in this episode. He's still prominent in it, but it's not like in the first two where it's Loki and everybody else. This is more of a Victor Timely episode. And I'm good with that, because you need to fix it up a bit. But I do have some wild ass speculation I want to get to. Maybe Jay can find the wild ass speculation video and we'll run it, because that's always fun. I love that video, or that clip. All right, so this is something that came to my mind. In Loki season 1, we see in the Void Avengers Tower, we see Kang Industries, Qeng. Kang Industries is something created by a variant of Kang. That would be Mr. Griffin. Now, Mr. Griffin, a Kang variant, kind of spins off of Victor Timely. They plant a lot of their tech in modern technology. So like the Sentinels and all of that stuff. So they have back doors into just about everything. That's what happens in the comics. But there's some things that are bugging me a little bit, and this has to do with OB, Ouroboros. Because Ouroboros wrote the handbook. It's his picture in the handbook. So why? Why is his picture in the handbook? Why is he the one, why is he the one getting credit for the handbook if all he's doing is writing down all this stuff that Kang or He Who Remains or whoever built the TVA? Unless he's the one that built the TVA. In which case, maybe he's Kang. What if, and this is crazy speculation. Hey, Ed, what if OB is the actual Kang and he created He Who Remains and all of these other people, all of these variants, to cover up for him? Maybe he's the one that put the book back in the past. And it's this cycle that goes over and over again. Ravonna gives the book to Kang in the past. As a kid, he grows up, becomes Kang, becomes the Council of Kangs, all the variants, and then he ends up becoming He Who Remains. He gets killed off, and the last thing he does is has Miss Minutes send Ravonna to send the book back to create this Ouroboros, this self-feeding loop. So, what if that's what OB creates to cover the fact that he's the one that built the TVA? That, that Kang isn't really Kang. What if that's Mr. Griffin? What if OB is Mr. Griffin? What if he's the real Kang? Now, this seems wild because we've already seen the Council of Kangs and all this other stuff. But if that's all because that's what the real Kang wants, it would really be interesting. It would also take out the fact that people complain that Kang got his butt kicked in Quantumania, all these other things. It would solve a lot of problems, and it would also solve the problem if going forward Jonathan Majors is not available. You don't have to recast if it turns out that that's not actually the character. If Victor Timely is a creation of the real Kang and that all of this stuff is his way of controlling it and eventually creating the sacred timeline to create this big Ouroboros loop. So that could be why he's called Ouroboros. Though they do like naming people loops because Mobius is also a loop. So I just find that as an odd possibility. And I'm not saying that's what's going to happen, but I could see them doing that to solve a lot of problems. So if at the end of this series, Kang is no longer played by Jonathan Majors, but by Ke Huy Quan, Oscar winner Ke Huy Quan, Marvel wouldn't be in a bad place. Just think about that. Again, not saying that's what's going to happen, but I'm saying it's possible. Take our final break. We'll come back and finish up the show. Be right back.
Imagine being at a convention and going to an interview panel that's just for you. No bustling crowds, no hours-long lines, just you, the moderator, and your favorite comic book creators. Well, this is pretty much that. Miss Jen sits down every week with 2 comic book creators for a live stream interview about their latest work, and you can ask them whatever you want. It's Talking Shop, Mondays at 5 Eastern on The Experience, Comic Culture and Sales. To be continued. 3 little words that hold the secret to the next great story. 3 words that will thrill you, confound you, give life to new possibilities. Every variation of To Be Continued is a promise of adventure, a promise of excitement, a promise of unseen wonders and unexplored worlds, a promise that every issue you read makes you a part of a never-ending journey, and behind every page there will be an unopened door waiting for you. This story to be continued at your local comic book shop. Visit comicshoplocator.com today.
Go follow The Experience on TikTok at @the_EXP1 or scan the QR code on the screen. Our TikTok is like everywhere else we are, except you only have to deal with us for a minute. Seems like a win-win to me.
Welcome back to the Dan Wickline Show here on The Experience. I need to tell you guys that Minute to Skim It is coming up in a little bit, but Midhunter had to cancel the last minute. So stick around for Minute to Skim It with Jay, Kyle, and Miss Jen. And they got some great books lined up. They really do. So, all right. So that's my thoughts on Loki episode 3 and the twist that might be happening. It would make a lot of sense. It really would in my mind. I don't know what you guys think, but I would find it interesting. Though I think Jonathan Majors is doing a great job. The personal stuff is, until that's resolved, it's hard to move forward, you know. Now with the actor strike still going, they've got time, but we'll have to see. Jay says, I think Dan needs to write a movie. Don't care who it's for, just write a movie. I'd be happy to. Ed asks how I feel. I am doing a lot better. The second bout of infection has been pretty well beaten up by the antibiotics. I got a day or two more of it, but overall I'm doing a lot better. I feel a lot more energetic. So, you know, as long as it doesn't go back the other way, I should be good. It's just been a long battle, you know. I saw my general practitioner this morning, and I hadn't seen him since way back last year when I was in the hospital and got everything started with wound care and stuff. And he was feeling guilty as hell that he hadn't put me in the hospital months before just to get this thing started sooner, you know, and allowed things to deteriorate as much as it is. And I felt bad for him for feeling bad. So, But no, I'm doing a lot better. It's been a really interesting week or so. I've had a lot of strange things pop up, some potential projects and stuff out of the blue that I hadn't thought of that could be interesting. Could be some interesting stuff coming up. So we shall see. Also, Ed, I got to tell you, Lisa has requested me to crochet something for her that is going to take every ounce of my skill, and I don't know if you'll be able to see it, but it's an octopus hat or a squid hat with tentacles, and I'm going to try to make that, so I will be giving you updates on that, Ed. So, all right, guys, I'm going to wrap it up there. Thank you for tuning in. Come back tomorrow. I know we have a guest at some point this week. Need to check with Kyle to see when that's going to be. And I want to talk a little bit about the book that I'm listening to, the 1979 one. That is actually pretty good. It involves Kang, though he hasn't shown up yet, and I'm over halfway through. But we'll catch up on all that. We are going to talk about the Werewolf by Night colorized version at some point, and we'll do a Halloween episode talking about something. So we got stuff coming up. All right, guys, have a great day. Come back for Minute to Skim It, and I will see you guys tomorrow. Good night, everybody.
Join the party. Head over to our Linktree to find all the links for everywhere the experience is all the time.